Welcome to mini lecture 2 for our first unit. In this one, I'm going to review some of the key terms and ideas associated with research methods in psychology. Again, I'm not covering every single point from your book, but hopefully this will be just a helpful companion as you're trying to keep all the terms and concepts straight. So I will minimize myself. I will pull up slides. All right. So, some terms to start off with, terms that are significant at the beginning of a study. So first of all, a research question is the overall question that your study seeks to answer. So maybe something like, does caffeine affect recall in study sessions? Or does overall level of exercise contribute to level of happiness? So the big picture question that your study seeks to answer. Your item questions are going to be those individual questions on your survey, your interview, your questionnaire that you're asking somebody. So, how many sodas do you drink per day? How many hours of exercise do you get per week? So an item question are like the little questions on a survey. And the research question is the overall big picture question. The hypothesis is your prediction of your answer to your research question. So maybe I'm going to set, my research question is going to be, does the amount of exercise that a person gets per week contribute to their overall level of happiness? And maybe my hypothesis is going to be, yes, based on what we know from biopsychology about endorphins and the way endorphins can affect your mood, I'm going to predict that the level of exercise contributes to the level of happiness. So the hypothesis is the researcher's prediction about what the answer is going to be. The variable is your phenomena, item, behavior, whatever you're interested in. So a variable is just another fancy name for the thing that you're studying. So if I'm saying, does exercise influence happiness? My variables that I'm looking at are exercise and happiness. If I was going to look at, do exercise and age work together to impact happiness? My variables would be exercise, age, and happiness, because maybe I want to narrow it down and I want to look at if it's different in specific age ranges. So you can have multiple variables in one study. Your operational definitions is narrowly and specifically defining your variables of interest. So in that example that I just gave, I would need to give you an operational definition for exercise, and I would need to give you an operational definition for happiness. So maybe exercise, I'm saying, is anything that you are doing where you are moving your body in a faster or more vigorous way than normal to get your heart rate up. Maybe that's how I'm defining exercise. And then for happiness, that's a trickier one, right? Because I would need to say, for this study, how am I measuring and defining happiness? Am I going to give you a depression questionnaire and just make sure that you're not scoring high on that? Do I have a survey that tests different levels of happiness? Am I maybe looking at something that's more big picture life satisfaction? The way you operationalize your variable is really going to be a starting point of if you have a solid research study. Because like the example that I just gave, if I'm going to say, well, the way I'm defining happiness is I'm going to give you a depression inventory, and I'm going to make sure you're not scoring in the range of being depressed. Am I actually measuring happiness, or am I measuring the lack of depression, right? Because saying, does exercise influence happiness, and saying, can exercise be protective against depression, those are two different things, right? Because there can be a pretty broad range between, I didn't score high enough on this depression scale to be diagnosed with depression, versus I'm experiencing happiness and joy, right? There could be a pretty big gray area in there. And that's why your operational definition is important, because it's really going to determine, did you accurately study the thing that you set out to study? Did you use the right questionnaires? Did you ask the right questions? The participants is just a fancy name for the people who are participating in your study. There are two specific types of participants I want you to be aware of. One is an outlier. And an outlier is a participant that when you get your results back, you find out they're statistically unusual. So to go back to the example that I've been working with so far on this about exercise and happiness. If I were to poll all of you about how much exercise you get a week, somebody who's pretty intensely exercising, maybe an hour a day, 6 days a week, right? Like the maximum that I would expect to see consistently reported might be about 6 hours a week. Maybe if there's some of you who are involved in like a sports league or something, maybe you get double that because you do like an hour morning exercise, an hour evening exercise. A lot of you are probably laughing right now and thinking, I take my dog for like a 10-minute walk every day, so I get like 40 minutes of exercise a week. But anyway, I would expect my range to be, among those of you who actively do exercise, to be somewhere from 10 minutes to 45 minutes a day, right? That's going to be the average. Or let's be honest, some of us are probably at 0. But the example that I gave, like say one of you is on a sports league and you're doing an hour exercise every morning and an hour exercise every evening to stay in shape with that. And I'm collecting all these surveys back from you, and some of you are reporting an hour a week from walking the dog. Some of you are reporting 6 hours a week because you try to be consistent doing an hour a day. And then I get this survey back where somebody says, I'm exercising faithfully 15 hours a week. That person is an outlier. They are statistically unusual compared to the rest of my responses. And that can be important whenever you go to actually do your statistics, because they influence your results. There's a different way to handle outliers. If you take a research methods class or a statistics class, you will get to that. But an outlier is a statistically unusual participant. And then another important term to know about participants is confederate. A confederate is a participant who is secretly participating with the researcher. So if I wanted to do a study where I'm going to come into the classroom and I'm going to act in a way that's crazy and I'm going to test your response to it. A confederate would be if there was one person in the class that you were in on it. You knew what I was planning to do, and I had told you to behave in a specific way to see if that was going to impact what the rest of the class did. So a confederate is a participant who is secretly participating with the researcher. Your textbook talks about random sampling of the participants. That is important to read, but your textbook explains it really well, so I'm not going to devote time to it in this video. But so your participants are your people, and your sampling is how you go about gathering your participants. Am I posting flyers all over campus? Am I doing a Facebook ad? Am I going out into a public place and handing out questionnaires? Am I sending out an email blast to a listserv? Sampling is how do I gather my participants. Some other important terms that might be significant more towards the end of the study. Replication is, can my study be repeated with the same results? If I do my study with you and I get these results and I publish these results in a journal, and someone tries to repeat that study with another group of students at a community college up in Minnesota, and they get totally different results, there would be questions about the replication of my study. Were my results a fluke? Were their results a fluke? If other people do the study the exact same way that I did it with different people, can they get similar findings? And that's replication or replicability. Generalizability plays a big part in that. Generalizability is, who can my study be applied to? If I do a study with a group of college freshmen here in Springfield, Missouri, most likely I would probably have a pretty hard time applying those findings to a group of impoverished, middle-aged individuals in New York City, right? Generalizability is saying, who can the findings of my study be applied to? Did I do my study with such a narrow group of participants that I'm going to be narrow in who I can apply to? Because if I do a study with college students, especially with traditional age college students, right, like age 18 to 25, if I've done my study on people age 18 to 25, I probably should not be trying to apply those results to elderly individuals unless I've tested to make sure that they would respond in a similar way. So you can't overgeneralize your study. Who you can apply it to is strongly based on who you did the study with. Now, we have some topics that we have reason to believe it doesn't really matter that I did it with younger adults. This is just kind of a key point of human nature. And there are some topics that can be argued about, but for the most part, who your study can be applied to is going to be determined by who you did your study on. And that is what generalizability refers to. The next one is limitations. The limitations are the challenges of your study, the limits of its application based on generalizability, and the possible concerns that you have with your study. What are some things that maybe were a coincidence? What are some things that maybe my study did not fully capture the explanation that I'm wanting? Every single research paper in a scholarly journal will end with a limitations section, basically saying, here's some things that could influence the results that I found. Statistically significant is basically saying it would be statistically unlikely that the researcher's results were from just a coincidence. And that's a whole mathematical process. I'm not going to ask you to know how to do it for this class. But if you ever hear the term statistically significant findings, that just means we've done the math. There's a good chance this isn't just a coincidence. This came out this way. And finally, and this is more of just a personal soapbox of mine, survey research. Survey research is the method. Survey research is where you are asking your participants direct report answers about their behaviors, okay? A survey is not a piece of paper. A survey is a method of research. Questionnaire is the piece of paper or the link that I send you to on SurveyMonkey on the computer, okay? So the survey research is the method, and the questionnaire is the actual paper or internet tool. An interview is an in-person method of survey research. We're sitting down and we're talking and I'm gathering information from you. So don't call the piece of paper the survey. The piece of paper is the questionnaire. It's just, it's a personal thing. All right. I'm at almost 15 minutes. I'm at 13. So I'm going to pause here and start to video 2 of 2 for lecture 2, and we will get into our 3 main types of psychological research.